Hello and welcome to the FIM Team User Group meeting for July 2015. Can you believe we've been doing these for over 2 years now and still have so much to talk about? I'll just show my usual housekeeping slide. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Please do keep your mic muted unless speaking, but you are welcome to speak. Just identify yourself first, and hopefully everyone's got the chat window open and feel free to use it. I don't actually have any news items this month. I know a couple of people have emailed me about things they've been doing, so hopefully we'll get some presentations out of that in the coming months, but nothing specific to report. So I'm just going to hand straight over to my colleague Doug Stevenson, who is going to talk to us about the fine art of business analysis and how it helps with our identity management projects, which we all know are particularly tricky. So Doug, you want to...
Okay, I'm on. Right, so now what I'll do is put it onto slideshow, but once I put it on slideshow I seem to lose contact, with the other stuff.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right.
You're getting some thumbs up from Europe.
Of who I am and why Carol asked me to talk today. I'm a business analyst with Unified Solutions. It's an interesting term. I've been around a long time. As you can see, I've been called many things in my career, most of them unkind. But my history is I started my career as a chartered accountant. I'm a qualified chartered accountant, spent a long time in the accounting profession, but I always focused on IT. I joined the profession because they were keen to move in the world, so that's how old I am. It was when IT was first emerging as a real force. I did some internal computer work, but I also did IT work and became a certified information systems auditor about 30 years ago now, I recall. But I've really been in consulting all my life, all my working career, largely with KPMG and Hewlett-Packard. So I really see myself as a consultant, and that I see that as quite a broad definition. If people want to call it a business analyst, I'm happy with that. But what I see is my core skills are going into a client and being able to ask questions, understand what we're looking at and what the issues might be, to propose solutions, and then to help the client understand that solution and maybe get approval for it. And I've been in the identity management space for just over 5 years. So just a boy when it comes to identity management, but been around the traps a long time in the consulting side of the world. So as I said, one of the things I see in my capabilities is to work at the business context. Identity management is a particularly complex thing. I believe it's a very technical issue, but in reality there are very many business and organisational issues that have to be lined up with the technologies to get the sort of outcomes that people are hoping to achieve. From my perspective, what does a business analyst do? And many of you could say not much. And so I thought I'd just elaborate here the sort of things that I try to do when we get onto a project. And the first thing is to focus on the business issues or the business opportunities, to take the perspective of the client and say, what will the client achieve out of the process? So try to understand what the actual problem is or what the opportunity is, to understand what's technically possible. Some people don't have altogether realistic expectations. So I see it as a business analyst's job is to help get clarity over what is possible, to understand what are the constraints and barriers to progress. Often things are straightforward until you find a technical or a business issue that's going to cause some problems. To understand the corporate culture. How can this solution be implemented? How can it be adopted? You know, who's got to do what to make this work? All of those are from the business perspective. To me, one of the really important things is to confirm the objectives. You know, there's that whole list of things there, but the objective is, you know, to me, what do you get when you're finished? They're the outcomes. What will it look like? How will you describe it? Deliverables along the way are what we deliver as a project. My perspective is no point achieving your deliverables if they don't achieve the outcomes and objective that you've set. So to try to get those properly aligned is a fundamental job, and therefore that leads down to what are the requirements that will lead to the objectives. I just see that as the fundamental role of a business analyst. It's heavily process oriented because a system in its own right just sits there and blinks at you. It has to be used by people. It's got to be used in a business flow, etc. So the business analyst should understand what that whole end-to-end flow is, and to determine how the systems component of that fits into the overall solution. And an important thing is, as I've said about objectives and outcomes, how will the solution actually be measured? How will we measure success? And it's important to know who will measure it. And there's an official one usually. Someone will sign off something, but in reality, who's going to measure success? Is that a certain business unit? Is that various people in the organisation? Because by knowing who will be the scorekeeper and who will measure success will also help you achieve a good outcome. So all of those to me are the sort of context that we need to approach all our projects with to make sure we've got a greater chance of delivering the value that we know we can. So what's the role on an IAM project? And if you look at many of our consultants in Unify, my job certainly is to add the wit and charm to the project. Certainly Carol has said from time to time, I'm just there to show off how intelligent all the technical people are. And in many cases that's right, but I choose to downplay that one. The reality is that all these projects need people who have the skills to do various parts of that end-to-end project. It's a team. The classic is, you know, the rugby team with backs and forwards. And I see Ryan Newington there from Melbourne. He may not understand rugby, but you know, they're forwards and backs there. In the goal kicking area, Ryan, we've got cricket teams, batsmen and bowlers, baseball teams for the Americans, pitchers and batters, and in an orchestra, Carol will be able to fill the gaps in there about what are all the different parts of the orchestra. And fundamentally, what's really important is to get the right mix of people on an IAM project with the skills that you need. Here are some of the things that I try to do on projects, and the main one is to be the conduit, to be the link between the client and the solution developers. The technical people do fantastic work building some really inventive and clever solutions, and the client is the recipient and the beneficiary of that. And there's got to be a mechanism where those two stakeholders effectively share knowledge and get to the end of the road, and that's really where business analysts fit. I try to analyse and understand what is the client's environment, not just what the very small focus on identity management might be, but to try to take a bigger picture and understand their environment. They should try to interpret what the client is asking for. Quite often it can be confusing. Clients can use different language or different terms. Different people have different ways of expressing themselves, and a business analyst is usually good at trying to understand that and putting it into a language that the technical people can understand. A business analyst needs to help design the target solution, and that's where the mixing of business process and systems-based components becomes the important part. The business analyst should work on the process side, and the technical people should work on the system side, and then they work together. The business analyst has got to paint that picture. They've got to go back and be able to express that solution in a way that end users and clients can understand, so that they actually know what is being proposed. And I guess what needs to happen along the way is that there's got to be a good understanding of what's expected, because clients have expectations. That can be different from what's really needed. Sometimes they expect more than they need, sometimes they expect less than they need, so what's important to know is what's actually required. You've got to know what's achievable. It might be nice to have it, but can you achieve it? And then finally, what's important for a project is to know what is actually going to be delivered. So there's a whole range there that exists in every project, and it's important that that's made clear, and that's where I see one of the roles that a business analyst should be playing, is to get each of those elements very clear, so that the client and the development team know what they're about to get into. So let's get into some more detailed stuff there. At the appropriate point in the project, the BA needs to do a lot of detailed work, and sometimes it's, as I said there, it's a bit hard to know at what point in the project, because projects sort of start and move in different ways. To me, there's no cookie cutter template of how you go about a project. There's broad guidelines, but at different times you'll jump in quickly and do the detail. Other times you skate over the top and understand the environment before you start digging. But at some point you have to get in and understand who does what, where, when, how and why, to really dig down and understand exactly what's happening. That will lead to understanding of what are the business rules, why do people do things, what are the rules that apply. If we're going to codify and put into systems a lot of the things that people do manually now, then we have to understand clearly what all those business rules are. We've got to know what can be defined. So what's easy to be black and white about. In this circumstance, someone gets access to a certain group, or an attribute is added, or they get access to an account. We've got to understand what is the black magic part of the process. And we have many scenarios where decisions are made because the person in the organisation just knows that's what they're supposed to do. There are no rules. And I can give you a perfect example there. I was working with a client, and their records management person who sets each person up was explaining how they configured it, and there were a certain number of defined rules, and we were going really well. And I was thinking, good, we're going to be able to actually provision an account in TRIM, which was the records management system, pretty well here because we've got good rules. And then she said, and when I see that this person was working for a person in the Victorian office, I knew that I have to add them to a particular project, because I knew that the person in Victoria had just started a new project, and this new person would have been employed to work on that project. That's the black magic that we know we can't put into code, and we then have to work out how we work around that, how we can allow that to happen in the system but still do as much as we possibly can. We've got to know, importantly, what the exceptions are and why they're exceptions. So what are the business rules around, this rule applies until such and such happens. So to get absolute clarity on that is just the bread and butter of the project. We've to me, that all that's about is establishing that baseline of what is the current situation, because clients will say, we obviously can't go backwards. We've got to make sure we keep doing what we're doing, and we've got to do it better and give them more. So to know what the current as-is situation is critical in knowing what we've got to achieve at the end. And the other issue is we should be taking the opportunity to question why things are done a certain way, why those business rules apply, and if some of them maybe don't make a lot of sense or don't appear logical, there's an opportunity in these projects to present opportunities to change that, to rationalise some of those things, to maybe simplify. And again, the business analyst is in a perfect position to explore those opportunities with the client. Often you find out there is a reason and just, yes, it's ugly, but we've got to do it. And other times there's a great opportunity to simplify years and years of adding different rules and variations. So again, a good business analyst should be able to help bring that to the surface to get a better outcome for the client and to get clarity on what's going to be put in the systems component. Business analysts have to work with technical specialists to share duties. It's not one and then the other. In my view, it's not strictly a relay race where you pass the baton, although there are bits of that. But it's all about sharing the job, and I think a business analyst can work with technical consultants to share things that need to be done. Technical consultants do what they're best at, so analyse the technical environment. Clearly in identity management processes, looking at the data sources and the directories, the sources and targets for our processes, we have to understand exactly how they're configured and set up so that we can work with them. We all need to make sure the development and test platforms are going to be appropriate. Identity management solutions are just another application after all, and most organisations will have dev and test environments for their business applications, their line of business, their finance, HR, whatever, the banking systems. The IAM system is no different. So technical people should really work to get those set up and designed. They should look at what are the technical constraints and dependencies, what has to happen technically for all this to work. And obviously they need to start thinking about the technical solution, to do the things that they're very good at. As I've said, that it's not a relay race, it's a team event. So it's a partnership between the business analysts and technical specialists on the project team, and it's effectively a partnership between the project team and the client as well. But within the project team, it's fundamental that you need to work cooperatively to draft a target solution. Technical people can define what the system component can do and how that might work. The business analyst will define the business processes, how that will all flow, and then you have an interaction to say, if I can do this, if the technical people can do this in the system, then this is what the business process could look like. And then you sort of between you work out what is going to be the best way of achieving the outcome. And that can be some very innovative design work and some very clever stuff in the system to make the process work much more smoothly. And then you need to work out, if you're going to put that in place, what are all the other prerequisites and preparations that have to be done. So if we paint the target that we're going to reach on the hill, we've just got to understand as a project team what are all the things that have to be put in place to actually get there. Documentation of requirements is an interesting thing, and that's probably a session in its own right. With no question that formal documentation will be required, but I'm not someone who's a fan of just developing a requirement specification and giving it to a developer and say that's what you've got to do, off you go and do it. The formal documentation to me just documents all of the discussions between the parties, and the formal documentation has to be written in a way that does clearly represent the understanding that everyone has of the requirements. So yep, documentation will happen and must happen, and often that's what's shared with the client, but that documentation really should represent the discussions between the BA and the technical staff. And out of that comes this confirmation of the to-be process. This is what we're building. So the whole business model, how the whole business process will work, and that is what's, in a sense, the objective. Yeah, that's what we're going to, I suppose that's a deliverable. That's what we're going to deliver, and to be able to present that to the client and explain that this is how your objective is going to be achieved. At that point, the technical specialists should be full steam ahead, ready to start designing or completing the design and then get into developing the solution. My view is, in that part of the project, the business analyst should be representing the client within the project team. You know, they're barking at the technical people as, you know, on behalf of the client. On the other side of the coin, the business analyst has to represent the team when they talk to the client. So, like cabinet solidarity, you have your discussions, but the BA needs to go back and explain to the client what's happening and how the project's going, and represent the project team. That doesn't mean that the BA is the only point of contact. Clearly, both business analysts and technical people need to keep engaged with the client. Often you focus on different groups. BAs will talk to business people, some end users, whereas technical people, you know, often speak to systems owners and network managers and infrastructure managers. But it's important to me, fundamentally important, that both parties come back to the project and share that information, so everyone is kept completely up to date. But at this point, really, this is where the technical people do their magic. So in some respects, you could say the business analyst has done their job. What do they do now? And I've been asked that many times, and I've certainly experienced the request to get them coffee. If it's certain of our team, it's beer. You know, others of our team, it's wine. Carol's very good with her wine. They expect positive feedback all the time, and certainly got to keep building them up to saying you're doing wonderful work, and you've got to tell everyone how good your technical people are. So that's where often I'm expected to perform, and I think I do that brilliantly, but in reality there are some other things that I think business analysts do at this point, because all we're doing at that point is building a technical solution. The BA then has to push on and basically design and document the new processes. There are times when we've been required to do the work instructions on, you know, how the new system will be accommodated by the end users. Sometimes clients will do that. What's important that it gets done, and therefore that is, in my words, a business analyst role, and certainly we do that work. The BA should be looking at presenting how this thing is going to achieve the business benefits and deliver the outcome that the client needs. And that's where, I guess, the rubber hits the road. That's where the system, when implemented, will it get the right outcomes? And so the business analyst should be considering all of those elements to make sure that the organisation gets the most out of the technical solution. So what's it going to look like when it's finished? What will the end-to-end work or the end-to-end process look like, and to start working with the client to get that environment in place. Implementation planning is obviously a part of any project. So at this point, the business analyst can help make sure that technical migration bit is properly planned by the technical people. The business analyst will engage with the client to plan the communications of the new solution, what change management has to be in place, what training, what post-live support, post-go-live support's needed. What are all of those things that will make sure that what is delivered will actually be accommodated and used and the benefits start to be realised. We all know that data quality is often a real showstopper for identity projects. So the business analyst can certainly start looking at that, work with the technical people to identify the issues, but who and how that data quality and data integrity gets improved or gets up to the right level is something that business analysts can be very active in helping happen. And there's a lot of solution documentation, user manuals, help material, frequently asked questions, how-to guides. We have developed a number of those for projects to make sure that the technical solution has its greatest chance of being used, in the best possible way. And we've got to look at both end users, the people in the trenches who actually use the system, and those people who will operate the identity system and monitor its performance. So we need both parties there to be able to pick up the solution and keep it going. One to use it and one to keep it running. And business analysts certainly play a role in that activity. Testing is one of the other things I think business analysts are perfectly positioned to do. Who better to test the solution than the person who's basically there at the front, who defined the requirements and said, this is what we've got to achieve, this is what the client wants. It's that person who should be able to come in and confirm that the solution actually does that. And it's a lot more than just doing very clinical specific tests and small functional tests. And while they're absolutely critical, what a business analyst should be able to do in the testing is to say, yep, I can see how this is going to work in the organisation. I heard what the clients were saying they wanted, and I can see how this is going to work, or I can see how it's not going to exactly work the way it should, and there could be some minor changes that can be made to actually achieve the outcomes rather than just tick off 150 functional achievements, but it's will that solution work well for the client? And that's, to me, a very important part of the testing. It's all about that usability of the solution, not just the functionality. And the BA can help the client plan their UAT activities. And I said if the client actually does that, and we've had projects where the clients haven't really been able to complete formal UAT, they will often watch the testing we do, supervise that and say, yep, I'm happy with that, let's go. Alternatively, it's often a good idea for the client to take on its own set of final testing, and our people can certainly help them design that activity. The other one is then post-go-live support, and we often do that when it goes live, it's brand new, people have got a lot of questions, the support organisation within the client's only learning the product as well, so it's a perfect time for both business analysts and technical people to hang around and work with people to explain it, to address issues that might come up, to provide clarity, to fix little things that aren't quite right. Again, as I said there, it's a horses for courses activity where our project team, business analysts and technical specialists, will work with the right people to address that final bedding in issue, because many projects just stumble when they go live because there's not enough support given to that final introduction, because it will be a big change for the client to accommodate that new system. So it's our job to build it and to make sure it's actually working well. And finally, so that sort of got us to the end of a normal, if your IAM project. There is a prequel, and this is the other area that I've certainly been involved with at Unify, and I think an IAM business analyst is absolutely set up to do, and that's to do the strategy work at the front. So I said really no IAM project should start unless the organisation knows what they want to achieve and why they're investing in identity. That's a whole project in its own right, and we certainly spend time with clients developing identity and access management strategies and implementation blueprints to help them understand what technologies are going to be most appropriate for them, to understand how they can implement it, what's the best way to go about doing it, and what they need to do to get ready for it. Because in many cases there are some dependencies and preparations that need to be in place before they can really get into an effective identity solution. Things like in HR systems, are you managing contractors, non-employees in your HR system? That could be something that is a preparation for implementing an automated account provisioning system driven by your HR processes. So that the strategy will actually put the spotlight on all of that and to give the client a good idea of what it would look like when they get there, what they have to do, how they might go about it. I believe that IAM strategies do work. Nearly every one that we've done at Unify over the last 5 years, the clients have eventually implemented something. Some clients do the whole shooting match, some clients do a strategy and then sit and think about it, and it will take a while before it gets back on top of the priority list. But my experience is that once that strategy's done and the client starts to understand it, they will recognise the value and will come and start implementing. And often once they start, then that journey takes its own life and will end up where it ends up. But having a clear strategy and target at the start gives them some real context, and some, generally they will progress down that path. So just in that, we can't do identity strategies without the technical people, the people like you. The technical people have to decide what's technically possible. What are the high-level solution architectures? The BA finds out what the environment is and comes to the technical people and said, what can it look like? We have to know what the technical environment is to know what it could look like. So technical people, to me, are absolutely part of our strategy delivery team, because they have to look at what is possible, what is technically possible, where are the constraints, so what are the things that the client needs to fix technically before we start. And finally, it's the technical staff's opportunities to buy the BA coffee, because these projects are pretty well BA led and with support from the technical specialists. So clearly that's the opportunity for me to get my bit back and ask the technical people to get me the coffee. I won't tell you the response I normally get when that happens, but you can only guess. So what for me are the most important things? For all but the smallest IAM projects with a very clear technical task, a project team should include people with a fit-for-purpose skills, and that will nearly always include a BA and technical specialists. People should focus on what they are doing, what they do best, and delegate the other tasks to others. So I know very often, working with our developers, they hit a particular problem and I get a call and saying, can you go and sort this out for me? Come back with the answer. And that's, to me, an absolutely ideal way of operating. because people can focus on what they're good at and it will get a better outcome. It's all about teamwork, mutual trust, sharing, cooperation, open communication. They're, to me, non-negotiable elements of an IAM project team. It's important that each party, respects what the other one's doing. They're, two sides to the same coin. They're different, but they have to work together. And I haven't been in a project where the detail hasn't been overwhelming. And devil in the detail is certainly almost the saying, I reckon, written for IAM projects. It can be overwhelming if you're not careful, but if you take that approach and get the right people doing the things that they're good at, then you've got the best chance of addressing the detail and actually making sense of it and achieving the outcome for all the stakeholders. So the client gets what they need and the project team delivers a good outcome and everyone keeps their sanity. And that's just the final unified plug on the end, but what you'll notice there is the focus on governance, risk and compliance, and that's very much a business and business analyst side, and the strategy and maturity assessments are really BA-led stuff. A lot of the other parts there are technical. So again, in our organisation's sort of structure and service model, the BA and the technical people work hand in glove to address the client's requirements. So there you go, that's the end of that presentation. I've got some documents that I've produced along the way if people are interested. Carol, how do you want to handle that side of things?
So, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, my network's just been dropping in and out for the last minute, so I hope Matt's recording's fine. And I could hear you through, but I lost the screen. Yep. Anyway, yes, no, please, show some of the documents that you had there.
Righto. What's a good one? I always like these swim lane diagrams. We're just working on a project at the moment to develop an externals, an identity management solution for external identities to an organisation. And what we found is there are a number of different identity types, number of different people that the organisation deals with, and to register them, there will be a number of different registration processes and scenarios. So what we need to do, what I do is to try to document those processes to see what's common and to see what's different. So in this case, we've been able to define the broad scenario, and so approach 2 has got some certain characteristics that it might be led by or guided by a delegated admin who will be able to create the user's account, but the user will come in and do so and so. Will that user be known or not known to the department? All of those characteristics are what defines that approach, and then we'll work out in there where the registration portal will have to do something, where it will need to connect to corporate systems, where it need to connect to identity repositories, etc. So that's what gives us clarity about all of the subtle requirements, that has to be accommodated. And this particular project is actually going to be quite complex because it's got to support a large range of different external identity types. If I can just show you, that's the test cases. I was just going to show you the table of contents for an identity and access management strategy and implementation blueprint. So if I just slowly scroll down, Carol's warned me that I've got to move slowly on the screen. But we look at what are the business drivers for identity and access management, what's the current environment, how do they onboard, offboard, manage permissions, what process automation they have, how mature are their current processes, and what are the opportunities for automated identity and access management. We work on often what are the principles that will guide the solution, and then we start to draft what it might look like. And this is where working with the technical people, you come up with an architecture and a pretty picture as to what that might look like. Comes to the solution architecture, and if I then get down, and then we get into the implementation approach. So what phases we propose, what's in the foundation, what are the subsequent steps, how they go about doing that, to give them a good idea what they should do, and then what are the business impacts of doing that. So it's important to address that, and then what are the risks that we see for that organisation. So that's a fairly standard approach for our strategies and blueprints, and we've had good feedback from clients that's helped them understand.
So just before you leave that document, can you just jump down and show us the maturity assessment section?
Righto, let me find out what page that was.
Have you got one of those? You got one of those sort of graphs in there, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll have to. Sorry if I'm sending you dizzy with that scrolling. I just got to find the maturity. So there it is. So if you have a look there, what we've got is a model that looks at maturity along those contexts, so access, governance, role alignment, etc. And we will go in and assess the client against each of those and present that status. Closer to the middle is not good, they're not very mature. The further out you get is better, and it's one thing to say here's our target, but in reality the target is to improve on each of those axes, and for us to present that we will get improvement in each of those by doing certain things in the proposed solution. So how will timeliness be improved, and we'll be able to explain that. And just on that, Carol, I can quickly jump in this document. I know there is, I've just got to find it, sorry here, but I thought we had in there there's the score. So there's the worksheet that underpinned the maturity assessment. So there you'll see the criteria, what factors we consider in that, what we observed for the client, and a score. So their access governance was not awful, their role alignment wasn't at all good, that they did not have any role alignment, people just got certain things in a certain way, but nothing was aligned to the role or a position or a function that they had performed. And so we're able to show there's the criteria, they're the things we looked at, and there's the observation, and that leads to the nice, pretty spider graphic. And quite often that is a powerful little tool for people to get get a good understanding on how things can improve by putting in an automated system and addressing their issues. Anything on that one, Carol? Anything else?
No, it's just someone was asking how you were scoring the maturity model.
Yeah, so scoring is very subjective. I mean, at the end of the day, you just look at it and think, you can argue that we use the normal maturity model scoring, and that's what we try to do. And if I could, again, I've got all
it has to be objective. We do also sometimes, don't we, sort of give them another, here's what you are now, and then here's what you'll be after you implement.
Well, absolutely, yeah, and that you can target
and then,
that.
Hopefully the things have moved out a bit.
Yeah, yep, yeah. But I think in the middle of that document I've got an explanation of the scoring system. So there it is, which is I think that's a traditional capability maturity model. Different people claim to have designed that one, Carnegie Mellon, but it's a pretty good and generally understood model, and even Microsoft, I think, use things similar to that when they define, their IAM, the maturity of an organisation's infrastructure services is along those sorts of scales. So they're pretty useful things. Our experience is most clients will agree that they're low. They often think we give them more generous results than they would have themselves. So often that's not a difficult discussion, but it's useful for the technology people to show that to their management to justify why they need to invest, because they can say, we are in poor shape. Here's the clarity of that, and here's what we could get to if we implement some of these processes. Righto, so that's that one. Test cases. Again, we've developed some test cases there where we, and this is for a health context, on the sort of test cases that we needed to complete, and so to have thought about that right up front. And there's a lot of work gone into that document, but our experience is that made our whole testing for that project go much smoother. So often the planning for testing is as important as the testing itself, to make sure you cover all your bases. And one of the other documents, so just on this document, we're at a client, and you'll see, unfortunately I haven't blanked it out, but ACT Health, so I can't hide that one now, that's out. We developed a big system there over an extended period, and one of the things we needed to do was to integrate with some external applications, and the application wasn't set up to allow that to happen easily. And what the client wanted to do was to get an enhancement implemented for the solution that we could use to integrate and automatically create accounts with that. So we worked with the client to develop this document to explain what it is we needed to do, etc. So that was an activity where, in this case, Carol identified the things that would have to be in place if she was going to integrate, and the client and I worked together to put that in a document to present to the vendor and say, can you please go away and quote us to do this job? So again, that to me was the perfect opportunity of horses for courses. Carol identified the requirement, and I worked with the client to document it and put it in a way that the vendor was able to take it and do something with. So I've got other documents there, but I won't necessarily bore you with those. If there's any other questions, more than happy to try to answer them.
So we've had lots of people in the chat window discussing their own, experiences with, poor customer data, and there seems to be our general agreement that starting projects with business analysis is the way to go. And a few people have had experience with the business analyst coming in too late in the process. So I
Yeah.
think
Look, I think that's
see the value of kicking off with BA and having the BA engaged right from the beginning.
Yep. Oh, look, I think it's and it's an interesting thing. It depends on the individual skills and interests of each of the players in the team. And I've worked with some technical consultants do a very good job of understanding those requirements. Some that's not their best characteristic, and they work really well with the business analyst on the team to get clarity, and it's often easier to have a robust discussion with a team member rather than the client. So I think it's a really strong partnering.
Well, I'm also probably not the only technical specialist who's had the experience of thinking that I've just explained something really, really clearly, and all I get is blank looks or even outright irritation. Why didn't you answer my question? And of course I did, but I answered it from a very technical, low-level perspective. Well, the sync server is going to go and take this data from here, and then it's going to do this. And why can't you see that I answered your question? Well, it's where we're speaking a different language, and so for Doug then to step in and go, I'm not technical, but this is what I think is happening, and then they all nod and smile and look happy, and I sit there going, isn't that what I just said?
And the other times, and it's a two-way street, because the number of times Carol and others of our technical consultants have sort of pulled me up and said, now, Doug, that's not quite right. What you've just said is just either a gross simplification, or you didn't quite explain that very well, and here it is. I personally see that as a fantastic strength of a project team and of an organisation to actually, make sure the client gets the right answer, regardless of, how it happens. It should be able to, help each other out and correct someone early if it's not quite right, because it's a lot harder to dig yourself out of the hole if the hole gets deeper. So it's been it's always a really enjoyable activity to get onto a project like that we've done and work with colleagues to get that outcome, even if they are technical.
Yeah, you put up with us.
I think it's a fairly mutual toleration, isn't it?
Okay, well, so we've still got a couple of minutes left in the hour, but if you're sort of done and no one's got any more questions. So, thank you, Doug, for sharing your... Doug has a very, unique role within Unify, it must be said, because he does have to work with quite a lot of different technical people, and we're all special little flowers in our own way. And
and they're all very precious flowers, I must say. So I see James
on our own particular issues.
Yes, so that's all. It's all good.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording now. So thank you very much. And not sure at this point what's happening next month. I've been so busy in the last month with deployments that I haven't been planning. But do get in touch with me if there's anything you want to present, and a couple of people have. So we should be able to get something out of that.
Hello, and thanks, and Carol, thanks for the opportunity. I've heard about these FIM team sessions, and usually when I see the topics, they're a little bit too technical for my my intellectual capability. But I certainly appreciate the opportunity to go on about the business analyst side of things. It's something close to my heart. So thanks for the opportunity.